Welcome to our Hive Studios. At a time when Selfridges is holding live streaming shopping events and social media is becoming a favorite marketplace for fashion, is your business making the most of this popular interactive experience? Let's learn more about it with Thomas Mahon, the co-founder of London Film, a digital-first event tech and production company. Hello, Tom, and welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
You've launched London Film in 2019. What are the main differences you notice in terms of what brands are looking for the fashion industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we kind of launched just before the pandemic hit, which meant we saw a fairly seismic shift in terms of what brands were looking for. And I think that trend has continued on today. I think it's twofold. So the first is reach and the second is production value. I think fashion brands are looking for those two in particular. So through the course of COVID, obviously everything moved online. I think fashion brands predominantly, and this is a broad brush statement, but grew their audiences across their social media channels because that was the main way to connect during that period. And the kind of seismic shift we've seen post-pandemic is brands continuing to adopt those channels. So it's all about reach. It's about meeting their audiences where it matters. In taking two case studies, we've worked recently with Stone Island, we've worked recently with All Saints. While they're continuing to have physical events in a set location, it's kind of opened up the borders. So they might choose a smaller, quirky space. For example, we did Stone Island within a store, the Stone Island store in central London, and All Saints was a much smaller space this year. But they continued to adopt and utilize their online audience, and I think that's been a big shift.
In terms of live streaming, I know it's very popular in China, but when that tried to come to Europe or to the US, it's proving a bit more difficult to implement because people just shop in a different way. Do you think it's just a matter of time?
I do. I strongly believe that. I think it's kind of like the black cab scenario where people would say, you know, everyone would only ever flag down a cab on the street, but now you can order one via the app. I think it's just a matter of adoption over time, and the shift is starting to happen, and we're seeing brands starting to experiment with it.
From your experience of working with fashion brands, what are the main advantages of using live streaming services?
So there's a couple of different answers in there. I think the main one is reach. I think that's super important. Brands want to reach their audiences across the different social media channels. They want to connect with them real time. So I think that's super important. I think the ability to just personify a message or a launch quite quickly is a really strong example of live streaming. And I think it's more becoming the norm in terms of accessibility. So as a brand, I want people to be able to access what I'm doing, you know, real time from at home, perhaps at work if you've got a break. So instead of saying, okay, we've got a set time in a set location, it's actually a lot more inclusive.
Simon Sinek did use live streaming across all social media at the same time, and many luxury brands do that when they're having their show in Paris or in Milan. They do live streaming across all social media at the same time. Is this something that you have clients asking for or not just yet?
Yeah, it's a big request. It kind of goes back to my point of meeting your audience where it matters. So you could probably segment your audience in terms of what social channels they use. I know my mum uses Facebook a lot. I know some of the younger members of the team in our office use TikTok a lot. So it's really the breadth of which you can target. And so we call that simulcasting. So essentially you are streaming out the same output to multiple different social channels.
Selfridges has recently streamed its first live streaming event in Cantonese for clients in China. What can independent retailers and small brands do to jump on the bandwagon, but with a limited budget?
Yeah, it's a tricky question, kind of comparing Selfridges to small independent retailers. And I know the market's quite challenging at the moment. We've got all the talk about cost of living, so on and so forth, which I'll not get into. But to answer the question directly, for a smaller brand to kind of tap into that, which I think is the right thing to do, it's it's really self-education. So we have a lot of information on our website in regards to how we've executed live streams. Obviously, you kind of take that blueprint and do it yourself if you're a small independent retailer, but you can take snippets from it and try and execute on a one-to-many basis. And by that, I mean using your own platform to stream to your audience. From a live perspective, for smaller retailers, it's perhaps better utilized in terms of a launch, or we have an offering in store, or we have, maybe an influencer coming in to try on some of our clothes. Kind of just getting messages out there, I think, is the best way to use it on a smaller scale.
Moving forward, how do you see the future of live streaming for shopping?
Oh, wow. Well, I guess I always liken it to QVC and the success you've seen there, but I think that also has, that targets a certain demographic. I think live streaming moving forward is, for brands, is going to be particularly powerful. I think the key things that people need to focus on are production quality, getting it right. There's no room in this world for kind of errors in what's being done. I think timing's a big one. So one thing we've learned, and we work with a couple of different research companies that have helped us with this, is looking at when you actually stream out. So if people are at work and they're your target audience, then perhaps that's not the best time. So the time of day in which you stream is super important. So I think that's something that people need to look at as they move forward. But I think the future of live streaming for fashion brands is exciting. I think there's more and more platforms coming online. I think brands need to be clever with how they're doing it. So they need to not assume that they're going to do a live stream and everyone's going to join and buy. They're going to have to run quite focused campaigns. I think they're also going to have to utilize influencers, whether they're micro or people internally, to run them, so they've got their own pre-made audience that they can bring to the live stream.
Thank you so much, Tom, for being with us here at Hive Studios.
No worries. Thanks for having me today.
And thank you for watching.